Let's turn back the clock a few years to a chapter in my life as a combat engineer platoon sergeant. Enter a new company commander, a self-aggrandizing character who was convinced he held all the answers. My initial encounter with him set the tone for our rocky relationship. After returning from a grueling M240B range, I was summoned to the conference room to meet with him. However, I ended up spending a mind-numbing 3 hours waiting, while the captain seemed more interested in keeping us there than actually holding the meeting. His self-indulgent discourse revolved around his aspirations of securing our deployment to the Middle East, despite never having experienced combat in his 15-year military career. It was clear that this eagerness stemmed from the pursuit of his next rank. I dared to voice my skepticism about his leadership, promptly concluding the meeting and landing me in hot water with a stern talking to. As it turned out, the captain had never been deployed until then. His newfound enthusiasm for a deployment reeked of self-interest. The real twist came when brigade issued a call for volunteers. To my surprise and chagrin, Captain Clueless volunteered me, despite my recent marriage. Although I expressed my reluctance, the final decision appeared to hinge on the captain's whims. Then, tragedy struck as my sister-in-law took her own life shortly after a miscarriage. I stumbled upon this devastating scene, adding an unbearable weight to an already trying situation. To make matters worse, there was no consideration for compassionate leave, and I was scheduled to leave for deployment a mere week after the funeral. Refusing to be railroaded by the captain's reckless decisions, I marched into the command sergeant major's office, where I was mercifully dropped from the deployment roster. But Captain Clueless faced no repercussions, thanks to his tight grip on the battalion commander. Fast forward 8 months, and the captain's fervent wish finally materialized. Headquarters platoon and another unit were designated for deployment, with my platoon reluctantly roped in. The deployment process mandated a month-long field exercise for evaluation, typically aimed at higher-ranking leaders. By this point, my discontent had reached its zenith. So, I gathered my squad leaders and concocted a plan to demonstrate the absurdity of Captain Clueless's leadership. First, I ordered everyone to follow the captain's orders to the letter, regardless of how senseless they seemed. The results were predictably disastrous, providing us with some vindication. But the true genius of our subversion lay in the psychological realm. Captain Clueless had an inexplicable habit of turning in early every night at 2,100 hours. This presented ample opportunities for a series of nocturnal pestering campaigns. Creepy critters mysteriously made their way into his sleeping bag, and random accidents seemed to befall his gear. The pinnacle of our efforts involved setting up his tent directly above a beehive. These bees had a special affinity for the captain and were overly protective of their juice reserve, which resulted in frequent stings. Meanwhile, as I was required to meet the new brigade's high-ranking officers, fate smiled upon me. The colonel we were set to fall under happened to be my first company commander, with whom I shared a great rapport. In a huddle with my squad leaders, we presented a compelling case against Captain Clueless. We highlighted his erratic behavior and abysmal performance, emphasizing the potential danger he posed to our mission. Our plea didn't fall on deaf ears, and the captain was promptly relieved of command, a career-damaging blow. As for me and my platoon, I reluctantly prepared for deployment under new leadership. The new company commander was a familiar face from my past, my old platoon leader from a prior deployment. I couldn't bear the thought of my soldiers going to war without me. Little did I know that this deployment would be my last, as injuries forced my exit from the military. Fortunately, we all returned unscathed.
For nearly a decade, I dedicated my professional life to a certain home improvement store, grinding through the challenges and triumphs that come with such a commitment. My journey began in the sunny state of North Carolina, where I spent 7 long years honing my skills, learning the ropes, and climbing the corporate ladder. But life had other plans for me, ones that were written in the stars, or perhaps, more accurately, in the positive pregnancy test of my best friend. This pivotal moment in my life led me further north, a move that I would never regret, despite the incredible upheaval it caused. My best friend, alongside her husband, was soon to become a parent, and not just any parent, I was to become the godparent of their child. With great excitement and a touch of trepidation, I transferred to a store in the vicinity, hoping to continue my dedicated service. This new chapter in my life came with a slew of new responsibilities. I began my time there in the garden department, tending to the plants, helping customers with their questions, and keeping the section in pristine condition. It was a fulfilling role that I relished. However, life at the store wasn't as simple as tending to plants and helping customers. The staff levels were lean, and the demands on employees were relentless. I found myself being shuffled from department to department, filling in wherever there was a gap, and keeping the operation running as smoothly as possible. My dedication and willingness to assist in any capacity made me a versatile asset. It was a tough job, but I believed in giving my best, no matter the role. Despite my unwavering commitment, there was a hiccup in the form of a miscommunication regarding my employment status. I had already relocated, and my old HR had somehow left the impression that I wanted to work part-time. As a result, I was working part-time hours despite my full-time dedication. This presented a challenge in making ends meet, so I secured a part-time overnight job at a gym. Juggling 2 jobs was no small feat, especially with my friend's expanding family and the arrival of my godchild. My friends and I shared a unique bond, as I was not just a friend but also the proud godfather of their child. It was a role I embraced wholeheartedly. As my godchild grew, I spent an increasing amount of time assisting in her upbringing, and my heart swelled with affection for her. I was grateful for every moment I could spend with her, capturing treasured memories in photos and stories that I eagerly shared with my coworkers. It was during this period of transition and adjustment that I began to notice a shift in the workplace atmosphere. While I was open about my godchild and the time I devoted to her care, not everyone was supportive. My higher-ups and some coworkers began to question my commitment and availability. It was as though the idea of a male employee devoting time to childcare was unfathomable. Rumors began to circulate, sowing the seeds of doubt and suspicion. There were whispers that I was the father of my godchild, a paternity hidden from my friend's husband. The source of these rumors remained a mystery, but I couldn't help but suspect my assistant manager, who had made derogatory comments about men taking care of children in the past. It seemed that prejudice and stereotypes were overshadowing the truth. As my role as a godparent and babysitter intertwined with my work responsibilities, I encountered my fair share of challenges. My full-time position in the receiving department, under the supervision of a less than amicable supervisor, demanded my utmost dedication. However, I continued to assist in my godchild's care as much as possible, a choice motivated by love and friendship. I often spoke fondly of her to my coworkers, sharing stories and photographs. But my openness about my personal life was met with disapproval by certain individuals in positions of authority. My supervisor expressed frustration with my inability to work overtime to cover his needs, as our department often required extended hours. My second job and babysitting responsibilities prevented me from meeting this demand. I struggled to balance the expectations of my workplace with the obligations I had taken on as a godparent. In doing so, I was met with a lack of understanding from management. Then came the day when the situation took a sharp turn for the worse. The holiday plans I had requested well in advance, following the company's electronic system protocol, were abruptly cancelled without explanation. I had never missed a major holiday since my move to the northern store, and I had received these same days off the year before. Something had changed since the arrival of the assistant manager. Soon afterward, my world was once again upended. A coworker, with whom I worked closely every day, tested positive for COVID-19. Per company rules, I was required to self-isolate until I could receive a positive or negative test result myself. The COVID-19 pandemic had already plunged our lives into uncertainty, and now, it threatened to unravel everything further. It took a full week to secure a testing appointment due to the Omicron variant, and during this time, I faced relentless harassment. Both management and my supervisor bombarded me with text messages and phone calls, pushing me to obtain an at-home test and return to work as soon as possible. Amid these pressures, I had a duty to inform everyone I had been in contact with about my exposure to COVID-19. This duty extended to my friends, family, and roommates, potentially disrupting their own holiday plans and posing a risk to their health. Thankfully, the test came back negative, but the toll on my mental and emotional well-being was undeniable. I had reached a breaking point. My situation had become unbearable, and I was determined to protect my family and loved ones. They were my anchor, and their well-being was my priority. The final straw came during a winter storm that blanketed the Northeast with snow and ice, making travel treacherous. After completing my shift, I received a distressing call. My friend's husband had been involved in a car accident on the icy roads, and I had to go to their aid. They were injured and stranded, with no power in their home and an infant to care for. They had no one else to turn to but me, as my four-wheeled vehicle was their lifeline. I had few sick hours remaining, but I promptly informed work of my family emergency and called out each day with ongoing family emergency for the entire week. It was a matter of human decency and responsibility. However, I was met with the same relentless barrage of calls from management, demanding my immediate return to work. In retrospect, these events aligned to create the perfect storm in my life. I was done. I reached a point of no return. Early one Sunday morning, I walked into work and placed my resignation letter on the HR desk. It was a symbolic and somewhat petty act, but it felt necessary to assert my boundaries and priorities. I had dedicated 8 long years of my life to this company, giving my all and asking for little in return. As I left the building, I encountered my supervisor, the same person with whom I had shared countless hours of work and challenging moments. He questioned, with a hint of anger, if I was finally coming back to work. I informed him of my decision to leave, ignoring his provocations, and walked away, leaving the past behind. Several hours later, a text message arrived, a message that would set in motion a semi-accidental act of revenge. The message was from my assistant manager, and it read, "We will see how long you can take care of your love child without us." This text was a critical mistake on their part, one that revealed their true intentions. My friends had been aware of the rumors from the beginning, as I had nothing to hide and wanted to ensure that any information about my life reached them directly from me. These friends, who were more like family, reacted with indignation at the term love child, a term that felt like a slur against the child I had grown to love as my own. It was unacceptable and offensive. I had no intention of letting this go. It was time to bring the issue to the attention of corporate HR. I began to gather my evidence, including text messages from my supervisor, call records, and the incriminating text message from my assistant manager. If I was leaving, I was going to do so with my dignity intact and a strong sense of justice. This was not just about me, it was about challenging the prejudices and stereotypes that had haunted my journey. What transpired in the aftermath is mostly second-hand information, as I had severed ties with the store and my colleagues. Nevertheless, the repercussions were swift and intense. It was as though the message I had sent was a catalyst for the eruption of a dormant volcano of discontent within the store. The assistant manager made a grave error during a meeting of management and supervisors. They declared that I had been fired for job abandonment and immorality. The term immorality was not just a stretch, it was a falsehood. It was my supervisor who, to his credit, defended me against the accusations, but this act led to his own firing on the spot. The store's HR representative, in possession of the printed letter of termination that I had placed on their desk, clarified that I had not been fired but had chosen to leave of my own accord. Frustration erupted within the store as the assistant manager attempted to fire the HR representative as well, right in front of the staff. Chaos ensued, and the situation began to spiral out of control. I cannot verify every detail of what occurred next, but it is a tale told to me by friends who remained at the store. Entire departments began to act in unity, taking a stand against the injustice they had experienced. The backlash against the assistant manager was swift and unrelenting. The appliances department, with unwavering solidarity, left the store. The garden department followed suit, with their manager leading the way to a competitor, a move that had been in the works long before my saga began. The front desk employees walked out in protest. It was revealed that the assistant manager had threatened and blackmailed several Muslim part-timers to deter them from wearing their headscarves if they wanted hours. The lumber department, the close partner of receiving, saw its employees quit. The pro-desk employees joined the front desk in protest, as one of their members, a Sikh man, had also been threatened. Cashiers bore the brunt of the turmoil. Both head cashiers resigned, and other trained cashiers walked out alongside the desks. The operations manager, having reported the situation to the district manager, resigned before his arrival, taking the HR representative and my former supervisor with him. The situation snowballed until it seemed to reach a breaking point. My source's last update on the assistant manager was that they were seen sprinting to their car. The store manager was left with no choice but to shut the store down for the next 2 days. It was a dramatic turn of events that, as far as I know, has continued to have far-reaching consequences. I remain in contact with the other affected parties, as several families are pursuing legal action. The company is likely to attempt to keep this incident under wraps, but the wheels of justice have been set in motion. As for me, I have secured a full-time position at the gym, where I can enjoy a more balanced and fulfilling life. I have embraced the gift of extra sleep and quality time with my loved ones, making it clear that I will never again subject myself to the grueling schedule of 56 to 64-hour workweeks. I have walked away from that home improvement store, but my legacy lives on, and justice has been served. It was an unexpected turn of events that reminded us all of the power of unity and the importance of standing up against injustice.